Coming to you once again from sunny Southern California, it is bowl season, guys, and we're going to look at the injury report for the games upcoming. We've got the top 7 teams that survived to the championship round, and this week, of course, Georgia doesn't have to play, but we have 3 big bowl games coming up. You've got Ohio State taking on the New Mexico Lobos, the defending champions. You've got California taking on the Michigan Wolverines, and you got the San Diego State Aztecs taking on the Oregon Ducks. The Sugar Bowl between the Aztecs and the Oregon Ducks. Both teams come in 8-5, and of course this is a quarterfinal game. These 2 teams are playing for the right to go to the semifinals and compete for the opportunity to go to the national championship game. And we'll start off with the Aztecs, number 5, coming in. The Aztecs quarterback situation is not too bad. They got C.J. Stroud healthy. Now that's a nice change from last year because the Aztecs had some injury issues with Stroud when he had a late season concussion and missed the bowl game. And the Aztecs somehow were still able to get to the national championship game. So that's a good sign for the Aztecs. Where the Aztecs run into trouble is at the wide receiver position, as you can see. You've got CeeDee Lamb and you've got Josh Downs, both dealing with shoulder injuries, and that could be a problem. I mean, especially if they miss the game, obviously. As you can see, the Aztecs really don't have much other than, Marvin Harrison after that. So if Downs and CeeDee Lamb both miss this game, it's really going to hurt the Aztecs. They just picked up Michael Woods, but he's hardly going to be, somebody you can depend on. He could have a big game. You never know. Also, Byron Young, one of their defensive linemen, and a very talented one at that. He has a hamstring issue. He's on the IR, and he's expected to come back in Week 16. The Aztecs might consider just leaving him on the IR and getting the injury red shirt because they would like to keep this guy around for a while. But, if it comes down to it and he's healthy and the Aztecs are actually in a bowl game, like a big bowl game, like they move on to the semifinals or the finals, yeah, they're going to question that decision about keeping this guy on the IR. I think they just put him there because they had the opportunity to do so, seeing how he was in the NFL's IR list. And so they just thought, well, put him on there. And that was me, of course. I did that. So we'll see what happens with Byron Young, but he definitely won't be playing this week. Another huge injury issue for the Aztecs is Isaiah McDuffie, their linebacker. He is got an ankle problem, which is never good for a linebacker, and he's questionable for Week 15. So that would really hurt the Aztecs. He's been one of their best linebackers. As you can see, last week he had 4 points. Then you have defensive back Jalen Petrie also out for this week's. He's not all. I mean, there's other guys that are questionable, but he's actually out for Week 15. And that definitely doesn't help. Now, of course, most teams have a pretty deep secondary, so maybe the Aztecs can survive this. And then you have surprising defensive back Kalen Carson of the Cowboys. He's in his first year, rookie season out of Wake Forest, and he really made a splash as a cornerback for the Cowboys this year. And even though he's only had a few points, as you can see, like 13 points on the season, he's actually had a great year. When he's been healthy, he has been pretty much a contributor. You can see it, 3 fantasy points here in Week 10, 3 in Week 9. He had 3 in Week 3, 3 in Week 1. This guy is actually pretty, he's pretty productive when he plays. Now, of course, in fantasy football, you got to realize sometimes, a corner is only playing, he's only getting points in fantasy points because he's making tackles, and that's probably because the opposing offense is going after him because he's young and he's not from a particularly big program, Wake Forest. So it is what it is. I think basically the Aztecs are going to consider this guy for the future. They're definitely going to leave him on the injured reserve list and just give him the injury red shirt. Switching gears to the Oregon Ducks, this is an area of concern for them. Their quarterback, Justin Herbert, has an ankle problem, but I think he's probably going to play. So, but it is something to think about. It could limit his production this week. He's having a great season as always. He's a great quarterback, and he would be very missed if he did not play this game. He had just about 7 fantasy points last week, but seeing how the way CJ Stroud is playing, this could be an area where the Ducks could seize an advantage in this bowl game. Jalen Waddle is an area of concern for the Ducks. He is limited in practice midweek. He has a hamstring issue, so who knows what happens with that? But that would be a big loss if they didn't have Jalen Waddle. A big miss for the Ducks is going to be DeMarvion Overshown, linebacker from the Dallas Cowboys. He is out. He's got an MCL. That is not good news. So most likely this guy probably done for the season, and that's definitely going to hurt the Ducks. Secondary for Oregon is also extremely questionable, as they have several injuries to their top guys. J.C. Horn of the Carolina Panthers is limited right now in practice, as you can see. So that would be a big miss for them. And on top of that, Reed Blankenship, who's always very productive, he has a concussion situation, so he might not be able to make it for this week's game as well. And that would really hurt this team. As you can see here, J.C. Horn is their top scorer at the DB position, and Reed Blankenship is number 2, and he averages more points per game than J.C. Horn. They do have Devin Witherspoon. They're going to need him. You look at guys down the line, though, you got Tariq Woolen, who actually scored pretty well last week, so he could fill in very nicely for the Ducks. But there are some issues here. So there you have it for the Sugar Bowl. Final injury report as we go into Thursday Night Football. You've got the Oregon Ducks with a few injuries, the San Diego State Aztecs with a few injuries, and so it's kind of equaling out, but I think the Aztecs are in some trouble there at wide receiver because their guys are not 100%, and Marvin Harrison has failed to become that like CeeDee Lamb character, yet. I think he's got some potential down the line. He probably becomes a pretty good wide receiver, but he's not ready this year. So if the Aztecs are without CeeDee Lamb at 100% and he just kind of underperforms, that could be an issue. Also Josh Downs, that's going to be a problem for the Aztecs if he cannot, be at his fullest, because he has come up big for the Aztecs this year. So guys, I'll talk to you soon. That's a promise. All right, talk to you later, guys.